I'm a triple Libra and a life path 11, so I'm like obsessed with justice and fairness and balance and like shedding the low vibrational illusions that society programs into us. And I'm also super inclined to spirituality, and I can't help but see how they're so intertwined, you know, that it's like that quote, I can't remember who said it, but no one can be free while anyone else is enslaved, you know, like we're all connected as a soul collective. If you manifested in earth onto earth at this time, it's to cohabitate and coincide with the people that are around you. And I really believe that if you manifested into this reality in this lifetime as someone who's white, it's your part of your mission here and your responsibility to heal a lot of the karma from the past, from our ancestors, by finally acknowledging and taking responsibility for those crimes against humanity, basically. I'll get into all this more specifically in a second. But I just want to like thank you for watching. I hope this is like helpful. At the end of this, if you have any questions or comments, advice to other people on how you confront white supremacy in your life every day, please share those. I really think it's important for white people to educate each other, to take some of the burden off of Black activists, to be holding our hand through this white supremacy 101 class. I think it's time that we really stop being so performative and start being real. Basically, everything has become commodified. You know, nothing can stay pure in capitalism for long, but there are a lot of people on the internet, white people, who are pretending to be allies, who, you know, would genuinely call themselves allies, who pick and choose what they follow, who still argue in the comments of posts of Black activists being really, you know, just really resistant to being educated, being really resistant to growth. And the heart of this is that white supremacy is a program. Basically, we're programmed with a lot of things in this 3D matrix reality that we live in. And, you know, it's like patriarchy is a program. We have all these beliefs about what it means to be a woman, what gender means, what sexuality looks like, that there's masculine and feminine and nothing else. And we're not allowed to, it basically stops us from exploring who we really are. And it serves to make certain people, cis straight white men, feel superior to everyone else based on the fact that they're the standard. This is what white supremacy is. It's white people believing that we are superior to everyone else based on our race. This isn't a conscious thing necessarily. It's not something that you set out to do every day, but there are just number one, not acknowledging your privilege, not acknowledging okay, yes, my life has been easier because I've been white. Basically, it's just looking at your life, seeing your exact same circumstances for all the ways that they are, you know, this has been my struggle, this is how life has been hard for me. But then considering for maybe a second that a person who lived your exact same life, moment to moment, day by day, everything was exactly the same, you existed in parallel universes. The person who was the person of color would have a harder life. Things would not come as easily to them. They wouldn't be supported by the system as much, if you will, and in many cases are antagonized by the system, are attacked and purposefully oppressed by the system. You know, it's Sisyphus, is that the myth? Going up the hill with a boulder on his back. It's you're just carrying more throughout life, so it's harder. If you're a poor white person or a queer white person, this should come as no surprise to you. You know that because you didn't have money, life is harder for you. So why would it be difficult to extend that knowledge and that empathy that someone who had even more against them in the system would have an even harder time than you, and that it would benefit you to work to combat that within yourself, that impulse to uphold that. Luckily, all of these programs are deprogrammable. It's the same thing with like limiting beliefs in your mind, you know, running the programs that your parents, as most parents do, because like we don't really know how to love in this reality. We're only now just learning how to unconditionally love. We've been using the words for a really fucking long time, but we haven't been practicing what we preach. Because unconditionally loving requires you to understand that there's more than the material. We call things unconditional love that are really control. So we're all confused about what our definitions are, you know? We're just now sort of waking up to this reality. There have been, you know, waves of people waking up in the past in cycles, but we're just like picking up the torch, you know? I feel like we get into a few years of like complacency, or at least white people do. People of color have been like defending their right to exist since the beginning of time. It's just that we've always held all the power because I feel like we were the most just like called to conquer, and not because we're better, but because we're like more low vibrational. I don't know what it was about it. Like, obviously I wasn't alive. I don't know what it was about us that made us want to start like just have this greedy, like murderous way about us. I don't feel like I'm that within myself, but like you look at history, like that's what white people have done, you know? We owned people. We commit genocide. Like, look at history. But it is deprogrammable and overcomable. It's ego at the end of the day. So just like you run your parents' programs of like, you're not good enough, like you can't do what you want to do, you're not meeting my expectations, like I'm unsatisfied with you, or even like you're a piece of shit, you know, like these mental programs can be very, very ugly and toxic. And just like that is possible to stop, you know, once you realize it's happening, you can kind of get some distance from it and decide like, oh, wait a second, I get to decide how I feel about myself. So I'm going to stop that and start putting like more productive, more loving thoughts in there. Just like that's possible. It's possible to deprogram white supremacy and reprogram like equality, empathy, self-awareness, authenticity, cooperation. So it is fixable, you know? This is like a false paradigm of this reality that none of this is fixable because like it is this way and it's never going to change. And it's like, well, if we decide to change it, then it's going to change. But it's on white people. And I feel like in the past we gaslight, we act like it wasn't as big a problem. Like growing up in Virginia, in my high school experience, my high school history teacher taught us, and this is at a predominantly black school. I went to an inner city high school, and the teacher was this like white Southern lady who everyone loved because she was like funny and personable. But then we got to the Civil War and she started talking about how like it wasn't about slavery and like slavery wasn't even that bad, like this total whitewashing, like weird racist bullshit. And even back then when I didn't know anything, I was thinking like this must be uncomfortable for like all of these black students to be hearing this like weird defense of slavery, but it was taught as if it was fact, you know, like the system is white supremacist. It is like, we just have to face facts. And once we acknowledge that and we stop listening to it and we stop like repeating this false belief that we can't control how we act in the world, how we affect other human beings, like that is absolutely within our control. One of the first things you learn in therapy is I can't control the world around me, but I can control myself. You can control yourself. You can change this within you. This white supremacist program is karma. It's karma left. I think I've already mentioned this, although I've recorded this video many times, so I can't remember what I said when, but I just want to get it right. It's like really important for me to get this right. we came into this life, if you manifested in this life as a white person, then you are meant to overcome white supremacy. You're meant to take responsibility for it. You're meant to change the way you exist in the world. It's part of your mission here on this planet. And the faster we do this, the faster that the world can improve. Simple. So this is like a karmic debt that we owe. So even on a soul level, this is really important. Running these programs keeps us in sort of a lower vibrational state. It keeps oppressing certain people, and which keeps all of us from rising. And it's just like ego. Like, it's just not wanting to give up your entitlement and not wanting to give up your power at the end of the day. And if you're uncomfortable admitting that, you're still running the program. You still have some things to unpack. It's not saying that your life wasn't difficult. It's not saying that you haven't suffered. It's just considering for a second that maybe other people have suffered more based on their race. Just because someone else's experience has never happened to you doesn't mean it doesn't exist. We're all experiencing a different version of reality, and we have no way of sharing, no way of knowing really what anyone else's experience of reality is, except to talk and listen. And white people have been doing a lot of silencing for a very, very, very long time. So it's time to listen. It's time to learn. It's time to grow. And, you know, as someone who's done wrong, it's so healing to apologize. Healing for you, because it helps you take you can't heal something like a mistake that you've made, like a wrongdoing that you've enacted on someone. It's really hard to heal from that if you haven't made amends. That's why in the 12-step program, making amends is one of the steps, because like, even if it's just to yourself, but like to take responsibility, like, oh shit, I did that, is so healing. But if you can give that person an apology by a change in behavior, that's so healing to the other person. So you're like doing a service. This is a loving act to become knowledgeable in social justice and to educate others and to change your way of being into a gentler, more loving, more compassionate, more connected to oneness state is like the most loving thing you can do. And that means that you're like living the highest version of yourself that you can on this planet. To take another human being as yourself, you know, to be able to feel their experience, to like be a safe place for them, to be themselves, to be vulnerable, to foster a culture of cooperation instead of competitiveness. Like, all of this is good. All of this is high vibrational. I always say, like, you never heal a wound and regret healing the wound, you know? You never do. I've never regretted it once. I've never regretted taking responsibility for something. I've never regretted being vulnerable, you know? Like, these are all good things. They're just not taught that they're good because they're very high vibrational ways of being, and it's like a chain reaction, you know. Once you give into one of these higher vibrational impulses to heal, to introspect, to connect in an honest, authentic, unconditional way, you can't help but see reality for the bullshit it is, you know. And it frees you from the brainwashing, basically, from the programming, and you get to have a higher experience of life. And I think that's why more humans are waking up, more humans are interested in helping one another in this way. You know, it's happening like ripples in water, you know. One person does it and then all the people around them are affected by it, if only by that person leading by example, and then more and more and more. It's like it only takes one person waking up to influence millions, you know. The sort of seismic consequences of self-awareness and growth are astronomical. So we have all the power in the world, you know. But clearing this karma is will help us all ascend much more quickly. It's a big weight. It's a big fucking elephant in the room that like white people are the only ones not addressing. It's really on us at this point. If you look at history, you know, right now, civil rights activists, social justice, like black activists, people of color who are fighting for their own right to exist, and, you know, others too. Like, you never, I don't know, it's like when the most marginalized of us is taken care of, like all the rest of us are going to benefit too, you know? So it's like, let's fix this massive problem. Once that, I don't know where I was. I keep losing my place, guys, because I have so much to say. So one of the things that we have to understand, this next part of my notes is called Fuck Your Ego, Fuck Your Feelings. Basically in the area of white supremacy, white people are unreliable narrators. You can't trust your own experience. You can't trust your own beliefs. Most of them are probably wrong, and a lot of them are probably rooted in white supremacy, whether you know it or not. Whether you want to acknowledge it or not, it's there. So you have to put them aside. When you feel your ego flare up, it's really important to think, where is this coming from? Is this something that I genuinely believe and came up with by myself, or is this something I heard somewhere else? Am I upset because what this person just said triggered me, and because I'm guilty of this behavior and I don't want to admit to it? Or, you know, it's just questioning where you're coming from at all times. It's really important, because the human ego, basically its job is to resist death, to avoid death. And it's very sneaky and it's very clever. And it just basically like worms around in your head, like looking for little cracks in the foundations of like growth that you've put into place. Because each time you have a realization, each time you wake up to, you have like a reality collapse and you wake up to what the situation actually is, whether it's like, oh shit, I'm in an abusive relationship, or oh shit, I'm not happy in my job, or oh shit, I'm problematic, you know, whatever it is. There is a little bit of a death of the old, and the ego doesn't want to go through that. It's very painful for the ego, and it makes it less powerful. So it fights against that with all it's got. So you have to realize that, and basically like, don't be reactionary. Don't run away with your feelings. Your emotions might just be your ego. There's a difference between like actually being hurt and wanting to, and being rightful in your impulse to stand up for yourself, you know? And being reactionary from your ego. When you're being reactionary from your ego, it's a little bit more impulsive. I feel like we're less likely, less brave when we're actually standing up for ourselves, because that's very personal and very vulnerable and very honest, you know? When we're being reactionary and like pointing the finger at someone else, maybe projecting some stuff onto someone else, maybe not wanting to like own up to who we're actually mad at, that's very easy, and like you can do that very quickly. And that's what I see happen a lot in like comments on posts, you know, people just really being in their feelings and being reactionary, and not just like, they're taking things incredibly personally instead of just listening to another person's experience. And we just gotta stop that, you know? Just see your ego for what it is. Put it to the side and realize that the white ego is like responsible for most of the problems we have in society, that we're currently having to like wake up from and transcend, instead of just being able to have just been, just existed as like souls having a human experience. You know, like, we created capitalism, we created white supremacy, we created the patriarchy, and they all work hand in hand to keep us stuck and stunted and low vibrational and disconnected from one another. And that's part of the plan, you know? To transcend it is important work. It takes constant conscious effort. You always have to be looking in the mirror. You always have to be questioning your beliefs. You always have to be thinking about how you can exist in the world in a less harmful way. But like, if you're marginalized in a different way, like if you're poor, if you're queer, if you're a woman, then you know that like as a woman you're asking men and the patriarchy to like make sure you're more comfortable, you know, stop sexually harassing and assaulting people, accept equal payment for equal work. Like, this is all stuff that, like, come on guys, like, this isn't, yes, you're gonna have to give up power, but isn't it worth it to like make the world equal? Well, you can extend that, if you're a white person, to people of color. Like, we have some shit to unpack too. More shit to unpack even, which leads me to unpacking entitlement, giving up power. Like, anyone who is against unpacking and transcending white supremacy within themselves is upholding that white supremacist power, is not wanting to give up that power. It's the way that white women during suffrage started getting pissed because black men were going to get the right to vote before them, and they were like, hold up, that's not fair, like we should be next in line. And it's like, why? Because you're white? Well, that proves that white supremacy holds more power than patriarchy, right? And we need to stop doing that, you know, like this me first. It's like the same thing of like the future is female on all the shirts. It's like, so like white women, cis white women are like next in line is basically what you're saying, and like everyone else has to wait their turn. Like, think about that for a second. So you just be willing to give up power. Like, power is low vibrational. Power doesn't help anyone. Equality is the way of the future. The future is equal. The future is cooperative. The future is high vibrational, communicative, vulnerable, honest. The future is listening ears and open hearts, you know? The future is love. This is the least angry one of these videos yet, so this is probably the right one. I'm very passionate about this because it seems very simple to me. Once you start setting aside your ego and really consciously confronting your own white supremacy and the external sort of forces of it in today's world, you know, whether it's like shutting down a racist family member, or if you see a security guard like following someone around in a store, stepping in and saying something, filing complaints at restaurants when, you know, people are being racist. Like, there's ways that you can do this, making phone calls, putting your bodies on the line at protests, like just being a true ally, like not doing this for performative reasons, but you know, putting your money where your mouth is, putting your time where your mouth is, speaking up in ways like this, like educating other white people. It's unfortunate that white people don't often listen to people of color, but that's just the case. So like, it's kind of our responsibility to educate those of us who are lagging behind. It's not hopeless. We can change minds. We can change our own mind at the very least, you know? That, again, causes ripples in water. There might be people who, like, leave your life over this, but it's worth it. Like, who wants to hang out with fucking racists? But you will inspire other people, you know? Or at least, like, will, you know, if we, like, activate, if we motivate, we might be a more helpful presence, a more like action-oriented ally to our fellow human beings in their struggles, you know? One of the ways to educate yourself is to follow activists of color. They provide so much information. Although I was gonna say free information, but that's not entirely true. That's another aspect of this, which is like pay people for their knowledge. But I'll start by following. Don't comment, don't get angry. You are there as an observer and a student to listen and learn. That's it. You're there to take in the information, do Googling if you don't understand things, look into things yourself, but use it as like a jumping off point to just like open your eyes to another experience, because privilege makes you blind. I guess that's like kind of ableist to say, but privilege makes you ignorant. It puts these blinders, it puts this like filter of reality on you where you don't see things as they actually are. You can only see things from your privileged experience. You're limited in your view of the world. So by listening to experiences that are not yours, you are getting a clearer picture of how the world actually works instead of just your like program that you're running. Again, like, we each share a piece of the cosmic puzzle, but if you're not listening to anybody else's story, to anybody else's piece, you're never gonna see the whole of reality for what it is. So it's to your benefit. If your ego flares up, if someone posts something that makes you feel a type of way, realize it's your ego. Ask yourself, like, what is this triggering in me? Like, where is this wound coming from? What belief am I having? What is this true? You know, like, am I feeling called out because I do this thing? And instead of getting angry and defensive, what if I used it to introspect? What if I used it to grow? What if I used it to be better? And just giving yourself a little time from being offended to commenting, you know, taking action in some way. Like, instead of being annoying, just sit with it for a second and like really face what's really going on. We have to stop this, and then also pay people for their knowledge. If you follow someone and you admire them and you learn from them, and they help you grow, pay them. Simple. An important question to ask yourself all the time is, how am I a colonizer? Am I appropriative? Am I entitled? Is my ego thirsting for power over people? Do I intrude on spaces that aren't mine, you know? Just, do I hold certain beliefs that are extremely problematic and rooted in white supremacy, and I just like haven't felt like unpacking them within myself? Or I saw them as truths, you know? How am I a colonizer? And be honest. It's just important to educate yourselves. It can feel a little bit daunting at first, but it's really beautiful. Like, it's to become more empathic towards your fellow humans is a gift, you know? It just leads to a deeper ability to connect, which is what we're all here to do in the first place. You know, I see white women doing stuff all the time, like refusing to say excuse me in public, refusing to make space on the train for someone who needs to sit down, you know, clutching their purses tighter, describing neighborhoods as like good or bad based on like the racial demographic. Oh my god, I can't think of the word. Gentrification, like, that's the new colonization. You know, like, doing the not all white people thing, doing the Blue Lives Matter thing, like, not understanding that we don't live in a vacuum, that like that we might just be perpetuating something really sinister and dangerous and low vibrational and evil and wrong. We need to get in touch with our compassion and our empathy. I feel like that's our biggest issue, is having dehumanized people of color, specifically Black people of color, for centuries. We like kind of smushed out our empathy gene or something. Like, you know, there are like white starseeds and empaths who manifest in this reality and are much more in touch with than others, but we still have white supremacy to unpack, and many don't. Many never do. So it's like, how in touch with your empathy can you really be if you're okay with oppressing other people? And I know this sounds like kind of harsh, but it's true. This is all like channeled directly from my higher self. This is like part of my mission here, to teach this, to like help other white people through this, because it's dire, it's important. Like, fascism is on the rise in this world, and the